Hello, and welcome to the Klassiki Podcast. I'm your host, Oliver Hunt. Klassiki is your one-stop shop for the wide world of cinema from Eastern Europe. Subscribers gain access to our library of classic and contemporary films, as well as filmmaker interviews, video introductions, program notes, essays, watch lists, and much more. You can sign up today for a 7-day free trial at klassiki.online. Today, I'll be speaking with Agnieszka Holland, ahead of the release of her new political thriller, Green Border. We chatted about the production of the film and the film's political reception in Poland. 30 years after Europa, three-time Oscar nominee Agnieszka Holland's poignant new feature Green Border opens our eyes, speaks to our hearts, and challenges us to reflect on the moral choices that falls on ordinary people every day. Green Border arrives in UK cinemas on June 21st. Subscribers can now watch Agnieszka Holland's 2017 eco-thriller Spore, which you can find in our library today. Agnieszka, thank you so much for joining us today. The Green Border provides a lens into the 2021 Belarus-EU border crisis, which refugees from the Middle East and Africa were funneled into Europe on the Poland and Belarusian border. I was curious about what were your first initial thoughts when you first saw this news?
Well, I started to follow it pretty closely, and I realized that first, it is the provocation of Lukashenko and Putin, who decided to open another corridor to challenge Europe and European Union, what they are doing for years, and using the refugees or provoking the refugee crisis, including Syria, is one of the very, efficient means. And then I've seen the reaction to the Polish government, who decided to deal with that crisis with violence and lie and very racist propaganda and the cruelty toward the people. And the pushback have been the reaction to the situation, except that pushing people back to Belarus didn't change anything, because they've been pushed back and in the meantime being tortured and beaten and raped by Belarusians. So that cruel ping pong is going on, and unfortunately the current government not only didn't change it, even if it's democratic government we've been awaiting for years and voted for, he's not changing that, but using the quite similar anti-migrant propaganda and spreading the fears about the security and about, possible violence coming from the refugees. So we are in that vicious circle, and I've seen it since 2015, when I realized that Europe is totally not prepared to the fact that in many countries of the South, in Middle East and in Africa, the people are unable to live, not only live well, but live in any kind of security, and they will be fleeing and trying to reach safer and richer places just to survive. And they are able to pay very high price for that, the price of life. So I was thinking, I felt for 10 years or maybe more that the lack of the appropriate reaction, and lack of the deep, honest, and collective work of entire free world, how to deal with the crisis, will lead us to the philosophy of the fortress Europe, the race of the extreme right, and finally to the massive murders. So in that film I just wanted to show the human beings who are in that situation, which is very dramatic, but it's less dramatic than 60,000 people who died in Mediterranean. But we can see closely, and especially in that forest, which becomes some kind of the setting for descent to the hell, some kind of the new inferno, that we can see, what it means really for the people, for the human beings, and for our humanity, and for for the humanity of those who are coming.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about the film is the unique perspectives on the green border situation, and from a family of asylum seekers to politically active members of the public who are assisting these people. And I'm curious, was this multiple perspective an idea you wanted to convey from the start? And can you tell us a bit about the writers you invited to collaborate with you?
I invited first. I felt very quickly, like few weeks after it started, and when I've seen when it's going, I decided to try to make the film about it, knowing that I cannot rely on public funds in Poland. That we have with the producer I contacted and who was willing, to take the risk with me, the political risk and personal risk and professional risk.
Mm.
We decided to start what matter what and write the script and look for the money abroad and in private sources. So I contacted two screenwriters. One is a professional, very experienced screenwriter, but he also happens to be activist and very active in the opposition to the government, to the nationalistic populist government of peace of law and justice. And young filmmaker who wrote several scripts, a young woman who is mother of two very young children, and her husband, who is a doctor, anesthesiologist. He created in 2021 the group of volunteering medics with the ambulance who've been going to the forest and trying to help. Actually, they saved many lives. So she had access to that, and she had also. I wanted her experience as she was pregnant. She had little boy, and she was pregnant when we started to write, and so she took over the story of a young border guard. And another writer took the storyline of the activists, and I took the storyline of the refugees. And we've been discussing first what approach we'll have, what concept. If we'll focus on one particular event, one particular place, or one particular character, or if we'll try to show like more epical scope of the situation. And we decided that because it will be the first film about that particular situation, and maybe the last, have to try to show it in full. Maybe not in full completely, but have as multiple perspective as possible, and link them together to show, the different phases of the same situation and the choices the people are facing, if they have the choice.
Absolutely. And I'd read a little bit about that within the research stage, you'd included like off-the-record testimonies from Border Patrol guards.
A lot.
What was that experience like? And was it difficult to find these people? I'm very curious about how you guys went about this.
It was very easy to speak to the activists. And to local people actually also, who've sometimes became activists afterwards, but because they've been facing the situation and they understood that they have to help. And they understood also that they cannot rely on the authorities and border guard, because instead of helping those people who've been found in the forest, they are pushing them back to Belarus when they are tortured and beaten and pushed back. So the local people have been very interesting source, the activists as well. I spoke to many journalists also who've been very active in the first stage of the situation after they didn't have permits to go to the zone, so they became less interested. But the first reportages have been really very insightful. We collected several recorded statements and stories of the refugees, but after I had the occasion to speak to several in person, and the most difficult it was to reach to border guards, And actually, we first wrote the storyline, and after we found three bodyguards who've been willing to tell, who've been very shocked by the task they've been doing, and they wanted to share their experience, of course, anonymously. And actually, they confirmed what we already knew from the different sources, and we didn't have to change too much in the young bodyguard storyline. It was confirmed. We add some details or some situations we couldn't invent because they've been so particular and sometimes so cruel as well.
I was curious along these lines to discuss a little bit about the casting process. Did these kind of interviews, the people you were meeting, inform the casting process? And were people who were drawn to this project people who were also very passionate to tell this story?
Among Polish actors, I immediately addressed Maja Ostaszewska, who plays Julia, the psychologist.
Yeah.
Because she's great Polish actress. She's a friend also, but she's very active in many activities defending human rights and also animal rights and ecology. And she was very active on the border from the very beginning, and she was going there and spending some time in the forest helping. And after, because of her popularity, she became some kind of the spokeswoman for the several activist NGOs. So she was my first contact, and of course she responded immediately. And some actors I contacted, I knew because we've been working together, and I knew also that they are active in the opposition somehow. And after, with the rest, we went through the normal casting process, interviews, and so we had some refusals, no many, 2 or 3. I don't know if people have been afraid or just didn't find that the role is interesting to them. And the most challenging it was to cast the migrants, the refugees, and I really wanted the credibility. I wanted Syrian family to be really Syrian, to have same accent as a children has, and to make it for Syrian people who are also my viewers, to make it as credible as possible. And I thought that it would be very difficult, but finally it was not so much. We had a French and Belgian co-producers, so we contacted them with my casting director to find the casting directors in place who can help us. And very quickly we found our family. It was like few weeks. And I was talking to Jalal and Mohammed and Dalia by phone first and Zoom, and we've been discussing it, and they've been immediately motivated. The men, father and grandfather, they are refugees from Syria, from political refugees from 2015, and they flee the regime, and they've been in real risk. And Jalal spent some time in the refugee camp helping children. So they had that experience, in their system. And in the same time, they are very intelligent, very talented actors, and they've been also sharing with me the specificity of the Syrian culture and behavior, and so they gave a lot of credibility to that storyline. And children we found in Turkey, Syrian children who escaped also with the parents as a very young children, have been actually pushed back between Syria and Turkey for 7 times, but now they are peacefully living in Istanbul and having Turkish citizenship. But they wanted also to be the part of the story. I mean, the parent wanted, and children wanted as well. That it was the most tricky to work with the children and don't traumatize them. But we had the specialized psychologist on the set who was working also with the extras, among whom it was some real refugees from that border.
I'd read also that you'd shot the film within a month kind of time frame, which is remarkable for a film this comprehensive. Can you tell me just a little bit about the production and shooting a script of that scope within the time limitation?
You mean if we had to have the like limited screen time or the length of the film? No, it was a totally independent production, so we didn't have any kind of the request shoot in color or shoot it has to be under 2 hours. We just wanted to be as powerful as possible. And I contacted two young women directors, very talented young women, and I invited them to collaborate, to co-direct with me somehow. And because we had only 24 days, and several days we divided into parallel units, and they've been shooting one storyline in the same moment when I was shooting another. Mostly we've been looking for the locations which are close, so we can have same base and use big part of the same crew. So we try to do it as economical, time-like, and money-like as possible. But it was complicated shoot, especially in the action scenes and the scenes on the border, and so the crew have been quite big. But we try to shoot fast, to change the places, not to shoot too long in one location, not to attract the unpleasant curiosity coming from the authorities or from some people.
I've been reading a lot online about the film's initial release in Poland, and I was curious about where the reputation of the film now stands that the PIS government has been replaced.
That is actually a funny story, because it was, it was actually maybe because of such a violent attacks coming on myself and the film around of the premiere in Venice and then in Poland from the previous authorities. It was just before the elections, and they've been hoping that, awakening that kind of the nationalistic hysteria and making me the enemy of Poland and Nazi and Stalinian propaganda, they will help themselves in some, in some points in the elections. But they overdid it. It was so big that it was absurd, and it helped the film because it was the kind of the publicity which attracted a lot of people. And we had very, very nice box office in Poland with the film, and very, very emotional, very strong reactions. Actually, I never went after the screenings with Q&A we did. I never had such an incredibly deep and emotional conversation on any of my films before. And then elections, which no one believed that is possible, have been won by the democratic opposition, and I wasn't very optimistic about that they will resolve the problem in the real way, but I was thinking that they at least will humanize it and help, and use also the knowledge and activity of the NGOs, the non-governmental organizations, and the local activists and the locals, and will try at least to treat with the humanity and regarding to law, because the treaties and constitution and the international law are very, very clear about how to deal with the people who are seeking asylum or who are seeking help on Polish territory, on any of our territories, actually. And it looked for a while that maybe they are considering to change the policy, but recently, just a few weeks ago, just before European elections, the new government, the Prime Minister Donald Tusk, who I know for ages, decided to use exactly same language and the same means, and even worse, I will tell, than the previous government. It means they started to speak again about the refugees not as a people who has some needs and interests and some human identity, but as a weapons of Putin. And about the hybrid war and that they are enemies and we have to defend our borders. And unfortunately, one thing happened that the young soldier have been stabbed with knife through the wall they constructed and died. So that spread just incredible, moral panic and hysteria, and was immediately used by the politician to restore the closed zone, to forbid the access again to the activists and the media to go close to the border. And they allow soldiers to shoot practically without limitation. It means, and mentally, unfortunately, politicians prepared the general population to accept the shooting of the refugees as a best solution to the crisis. So it's very dark. It's practically I'm telling it for years that refugee issue will be the most important issue for the future of Europe. And now we are just opening the new fascism in Europe, not because the populist and extreme right politicians are taking over, but because the liberal and democratic politicians are taking populist and fascist agenda and credibilizing it. So I started to be enemy of the people again. Suddenly, 7 months after, no more, something like that, after releasing the film and going through all that thing, I again am threatened in social medias or also in the mainstream medias and calling the enemy and useful idiot of Putin, etc., etc. So the racist and nationalistic are there is on.
Well, I'd read that the state-supported independent cinemas were required to show a video presenting the kind of government's perspective on the border crisis ahead of the screening, which is very interesting. My question kind of being, and we've touched on this, but in a kind of broader sense, what do you think this story tells us about Europe today? And do you think cinema still has the power to lead to important political change?
Cinema only, certainly not. It has to be some kind of the wider action too. But it's very difficult to fight official propaganda. What is shaping people's mind or giving the permits to express their fears by the hate are the authorities, political authorities, religious authorities. But the cinema can change the world of one viewer or 100 viewers or 1,000 viewers. And I had the proof several times when showing that film in different countries that it can be a very powerful tool. But in the same time, one film will not change the flow. So, and I knew it from the beginning, but that is some kind of, I don't know, citizen duty and artist duty. When you see what awaits after horizon of our actions, it's maybe the duty is to be Cassandra.
Well, Agnieszka, it's been an absolute delight to talk to you today. Thank you so much for giving us the time to talk with you today about it.
Thank you.